deep within the bowels of the hunter's nightmare, where the stench of old blood is thick enough to choke the living, lies a creature that represents the ultimate failure of the healing church's nobility. Ludwig, the Holy Blade, was once the paragon of the hunt, the first hunter of the healing church, and a man who inspired a generation of civilians to take up arms against the beastly scourge. He was a figure of shining armor and righteous conviction. Yet, when you finally find him in the subterranean corpse pile, he has become a mountain of malformed flesh, a twitching, multi-limbed horror that has lost every shred of its humanity. To understand Ludwig is to understand the terrifying price of faith in a world where the gods are indifferent, and the blood is a poison that masquerades as a cure. Long ago, Ludwig was the man who sought to transform the hunt from a secretive, dark necessity into a holy crusade. Unlike Jaemin, who worked from the shadows with silent, burial blade precision, Ludwig believed in the power of the community. He recruited the common folk of Iharnam, arming them with heavy rifles and jagged saws, telling them that they were the shield of the church. He was the one who introduced the great swords and the heavy artillery, moving away from the trick weapons of the old guard toward tools of overwhelming force. He was obsessed with the idea of the Holy Blade, a symbol of light that would guide his hand in the darkness. But this light was a double-edged sword. While it gave him the strength to slay the most colossal beasts, it also blinded him to his own steady transformation. Ludwig didn't just fight the beasts, he became the greatest of them all, his body warping under the pressure of his own internal conflict, until he was dragged into the nightmare, a prisoner of his own legend. When the fight begins, you are faced with Ludwig the Accursed, a mindless, screaming animal. He moves with a chaotic, horse-like gait, trashing through the blood-soaked arena with a primal ferocity that leaves no room for strategy. He bites, he kicks, and he spits a corrosive, glowing fluid. In this state, there is no trace of the hero he once was. He is a beast of pure instinct, a literal holy horse of the apocalypse. The tragedy of this first phase is the sheer lack of dignity. This was a man who led parades through the streets of Iharnam, yet here he is, a shrieking pile of viscera. But as his health drops and he falls to the ground, something miraculous and chilling occurs. He catches sight of the sword strapped to his back, the holy Moonlight Sword. This is the turning point of the encounter, where Ludwig the Accursed remembers that he was once Ludwig the Holy Blade. As the haunting orchestral swells of his theme music shift from a chaotic frenzy to a triumphant, mournful waltz, Ludwig stands on two legs. He grips the hilt of the greatsword, and for a fleeting moment, the beast recedes. He looks at the blade, glowing with an ethereal, cosmic light, and whispers to it as if it were a long-lost lover. My true mentor, my guiding moonlight. In this second phase, the fight transforms from a beast hunt into a duel. Ludwig begins to use the sword with the grace of a master, channeling waves of arcane energy and striking with a rhythmic, disciplined power. He has regained his mind, but only to realize the horror of what he has become. He is fighting you not out of hunger, but out of a desperate, final attempt to die as a man rather than a monster. The holy Moonlight Sword itself is a factual anomaly in the world of Bloodborne. While most of the Church's power comes from the blood of the Great Ones, the Moonlight Sword draws from the cosmos and the stars. It was a gift or a discovery that Ludwig found early in his career, and it was the source of his famous guidance. However, the lore suggests that the sword's light was actually a form of madness. It offered him a narrow vision of righteousness that allowed him to ignore the blood on his hands. It was a lure from the Great Ones, a way to keep him fighting until his body finally broke. When you see him holding the blade aloft, you are seeing a man who has been manipulated by the very light he worshipped. He believed he was following a holy path, but he was actually just being led deeper into the nightmare by a celestial entity that found his conviction amusing. After you finally strike him down, Ludwig's severed head lies in the corner of the arena, still clinging to a fragment of consciousness. If you speak to him while wearing the garb of the healing church, he will ask you with a trembling voice if his Spartans, his holy blades, are still the honorable guardians he imagined them to be. You are faced with a choice. Do you lie to him and tell him his legacy is untainted? Or do you tell him the truth, that the church became a den of madness, and the hunters became the very monsters they sought to kill? If you tell him the truth, he dies in a fit of inconsolable grief, howling at the realization that his life's work was a failure. If you lie, he dies with a peaceful smile, believing that the light of the church still shines bright in the world above. Ludwig is the definitive symbol of the Bloodborne experience. He represents the tragedy of the good man in a bad world. He didn't fall because of malice or greed. He fell because he wanted to be a hero. He wanted to give the people of Iharnam hope, and in doing so, he became the most hopeless creature in existence. His fight is a test of the player's skill, but it is also a test of the player's empathy. As you stand over his cooling remains and claim the Moonlight Sword for yourself, you realize that you are simply stepping into his footsteps. You are the new hunter, guided by the same light, fueled by the same blood, and destined for the same nightmare. Ludwig is a mirror, showing us that in the hunt for monsters, the Holy Blade is often just a prettier way to kill. The legacy of Ludwig, the Holy Blade, is written in the blood of the corpses he lies upon. He remains one of the most beloved figures in the community because his story is so human despite his monstrous form. He is the bridge between the high fantasy ideals of a knight and the cosmic horror of a great one's toy. When the music fades and the silence of the nightmare returns, you are left with nothing but a sword and a memory of a man who tried to reach for the stars and was dragged into the mud. He is the first and greatest victim of the healing church's ambition, a saint of the slaughter who found his only peace in the cold, sharp edge of a hunter's blade.